Hi, Assalamualaikum dan hi. In this video, I would like to share with you about queue data structure. First of all, we will go to introduction of queue. Then, I will share how to implement queue using Java. Okay then, let's start with the queue introduction. The queue concept is very easy to understand as we usually are experiencing queue in our daily life. We can see many things involved in queue. For example, people queuing, vehicle queuing, even some animal also queuing in doing something. Let's see the definition of queue. Okay, the definition of queue. Queue is also an abstract data type or a linear data structure in which the first element is inserted from one end called rear or tail, and the removal of existing element takes place from the other end called front. This makes queue as FIFO, first in, first out data structure, which means that element insert first will be removed first, which is exactly how a queue system works in the real world. If you go to ticket counter to buy movie ticket and are first in the queue, then you will be the first one to get the ticket, right? Same is the case with queue and data structure. Data insert first will leave the queue first. The process to add an element into queue is called enqueue, and the process of removal of element from queue is called dequeue. Let's see the queue terminology. Okay, in the list it has front and end. So the inserted item, new inserted item will place at the back. Meanwhile, in order to remove it, remove from front. Now we will discuss how to implement QADT in Java language. Here I share an example. In order to implement queue, we have to apply the queue onto linked list. Beside linked list, you also can use array list. In this example, I will use linked list. As we can see here, queue actually implement a linked list. Okay, now let's see the queue class. Okay, in the queue class, which actually extend from the linked list. Okay, as I explained before, the queue actually have two main operations, which are enqueue and dequeue. Enqueue, as the definition before, enqueue stated that you want to add at the back of the list. So we can use insert at back. Meanwhile, for the second operation is dequeue. Dequeue means you want to remove the item. The method how we remove the item is we remove from front. So we can use remove from front method in the linked list. So both of the method already defined in the linked list class. So we just call the method only insert a back and remove from front. And for addition, we need to use get front. In order to use the implement get front, we can call get first method from linked list. Another one is get n. Okay, meanwhile for the get n, it's quite different here. It needs to do something here because in the linked list there is no get n in the linked list. Okay, actually in the linked list it has two methods for get front and get next. In order to get n, we need to make slightly modification. Here we do we get the object through remove from back in order to get the end of item. Then we need to insert it back using insert at back in order to maintain the item in the list. Okay, that's all the methods. So there are only 4 methods that we need to define for a queue operation. Enqueue, dequeue, get front, and get end. Let's see how to implement queue object. In a queue implementation, we need to utilize at least 2 queue objects. The extra queue object, we name it as temporary queue. As we can see here, there are 2 objects we need to declare. Firstly, for example, queue, the queue. Secondly, queue, temporary queue. Let me explain. As we can see the queue in the queue class, it has enqueue, dequeue, get front, and get end methods. It is not containing any getting methods. That's why to access the element in the queue, we have to utilize enqueue and dequeue. For example, we want to access all values in the list. So, we should dequeue all elements one by one. Then, we need to enqueue back into temporary list. Then, from the temporary list, we have to copy back to the original list. That's the operation what we need to do in order to access the items in the list. Okay, look at the example. To input 5 students into the queue. Okay, we get the value from the user using a JOption pane. Then create the object of student. Then the object of student will be placed into the queue using enqueue. Okay, insert into the queue. Okay, next, we want to display all the students in the queue. As I mentioned earlier, the queue process will involve with enqueue and dequeue. For example, we want to display, which means we want to access all elements in the queue. So, what we have to do, firstly, dequeue from the list, the queue. So, the student has been stored in the queue. So, we need to dequeue first. Okay, out of the element one by one. Okay, after the print, then we need to enqueue back to the temporary queue in order to keep the value. So this process will be repeat until end of list. So end of list, we will get the null value in the queue, original queue, and all the value has been transferred to temporary queue. Right after that, we have to move back the value in the temporary queue into the original queue in order to maintain our data in the temporary original queue, the queue. Okay. Okay, next, to demonstrate some possible operation on the data in the queue. For example, to find the max value, min value, and about 4 student. Okay, this student. Okay, now what we have to do is the same process as how we want to display our data. So we need to enqueue first. Enqueue the data, then we get the data. Then the data will needs to store into temporary queue. Okay, as we can see here, the data first, enqueue, dequeue the data first. Means remove data first, and we got the data. Then we can do something operation on the data. Okay, lastly, after we finish doing the operation onto the data, we have to store the data into temporary queue. So after repeating this process, for all elements in the list, all the elements will transfer to temporary queue. Okay. Right after that, we need to restore all the data from the temporary queue to original queue. Okay. In order to maintain all the data keep in the original queue. Okay. For wrap up, to implement queue, it is required enqueue and dequeue process. In order to access the queue, it involves with 3 steps. Firstly, we have to dequeue the element, means remove. Then we get the data. Okay, after do the operation on the data, we need to store back the data into temporary queue. So this process will repeat. First and second process will be repeat until all element in the list. Okay, right after that, we need to restore back the data that we store in the temporary queue, restore back into the original queue. That's it. I hope this video can help you out to understand this topic. Thank you for this time.